Bharat Singhani joins me here today. You can learn what his team is up to by going to encore.bz. Encore.bz. That's going to be a clickable link in the show notes. And if you hear me call him Doc, the reason is because he's a practicing cardiologist on top of everything else. So really appreciate your time here today.
My pleasure.
Being a practicing cardiologist, how did you find your way into real estate investing? And more importantly, why did you get into real estate investing?
That's a very good question, and probably not the first time I've been asked that. If you really look at it, 85% of the physicians who try to become an investor, they lose part or majority of their principal. So physicians as a group has not really performed well as an investor. It's very different experience with me. To start with, if you look at me, you already can tell that I come from India and I come from the western part of India. So business is in my blood. So no matter where you put me and how you put me, our community is well known to create business out of nothing. So with that background, rest of the things would be very easy to understand. So as a cardiologist, mind you, I was the only board certified cardiologist for a while in a town called Gulfport, Mississippi. And that means you are working 24 hours a day. And I was covering 5 hospitals at the same time. And at times, I had a patient population of about 100 patients a day. And that's a lot of patients to carry for a single cardiology practice. It can come anytime, 24 hours, 7 days a week, and it doesn't have holidays. So you are constantly working. So I knew that as a means to make a living, it is not a perpetual thing. And at some point, it will weigh heavy on me and my family and my health. So I had to look for something else that I can count on for my income. So being a business background, having a desire to find another source of revenue, the most of the Indians, as you probably know, 75% of all the hospitality assets in this country is owned by Indians one way or the other. So that was a natural footstep for me to walk in.
So, when you got into real estate investing, then where did you start as a busy professional? Be obviously busy. Like, where was your starting point? Did you jump
So
right into these bigger projects, or
no, just like anything else, you always crawl, walk, and run. And I started my practice in 1988. And my first real estate deal was in 1991. And one of my mentor or my godfather, Dr. Madia, who was also a physician, he just called me up one day and he said, "Looks like you're doing well with your practice. I want you to invest in this hotel deal." And he's my mentor. I mean, I had 100% trust in him at that time and probably 1,000% trust today. So I wrote a check and we invested. The first deal was Days in Fort Lauderdale in Florida. And it was a mezz structure, and we just invested as a mezz lender and learned a lot from that deal.
so you mentioned that 75% of the investments fail when it comes to a physician. Is that just because you just don't have the necessary time to do the vetting, or is there blind investing going on? What do you think is the cause of that?
I don't know for sure, but if I can tell you from my experiences and watching other physicians, the first and the foremost is physicians just don't have time. I mean, when there are emergencies, and most physicians do, you can't wait for, let me check this investment out at this time. So that's number one. Number two, physicians do not have any experience in investing. So whosoever is closest to them and who is constantly after them, they will fall for them. And mind you, good investment companies don't keep calling you. If you don't like to invest, or if you don't want to invest, that's okay. But they are not going to call you every 2 days. So the people who keep calling in physicians every 2 days are the people who exactly know how to get in touch with these investors, and they are usually not that big a successful businessmen. So their deals are somewhat shady, and I don't mean everybody like that, but majority or many of those. And then physicians fall for it, and ultimately the outcome is we all see what has happened.
Right. Well, working with somebody who's been there, done that, it kind of resonates with them too when you've had a similar background or experience.
Absolutely. Most of our, when we started taking other people's money, most of it to begin with were physicians and Indians, because those two communities could resonate very easily with me that if we trust this guy, we should be okay. And so far, we have kept our word, and so far everybody has seen that nobody has invested a dollar with us for decades that they've invested. We have never had a failed deal where people have lost any money with us.
So you're going to have to give us kind of your trick of the trade here. You were seeing 100 patients a day when you were in the thick of it, and yet you found a way to learn this and find the time. Like, how did you do it?
So the most important part, again, this question is very commonly asked. The most logical answer to that is I created a team around me to take care of the 100 patients. So by the time I would go see the patient, a lot of people had already seen the patient. Most of the work was done. So it was much easier to round on those patients. And then I had more doctors join and all that kind of stuff. So I created an infrastructure. Now it comes with a huge cost, but I knew that I can afford that cost because it was going to give me a better options on the other side. And then on the real estate side, I went to the people who were a lot smarter than me. And every time I did something, I asked for their approval. So the mentorship, it was very important. And then you just apply the logic that you learn in your medical school. You already have a hardworking ethics. So that's not a new thing for a cardiologist. And then ultimately, the risk taking ability that I have inherited from my parents. So all came to a perfect storm, and the rest has become history.
Mm-hmm. Hmm. So, was this like, did you actually plan accordingly? You decided you wanted to learn real estate investing, and to tackle that, you identified those things around you that needed to be offloaded and what you had to do in your life to just to make the necessary room. Is that what you're saying?
Short answer is yes. The long answer is if you have ever met an individual who always wants to project his life ahead of time and wants to make sure that the life stays on that line, you're looking at one. So we created, my wife and I, against her consent, we still made a 30-year plan because my wife and I are very opposite, different polarity. We've been married for now 40 plus years. So at least I can say all those things now. There's nothing she can do to me at this point, nor can I do anything to her at this point. But so I made her sit down with me. She reluctantly did it because she knew it was easier to sit down with me than to hear from me every day. Hey, when are you going to sit down with me? And we created a path. To put all the humor aside, we created a path. Would Sangani family look like 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years from now? And I still have those spreadsheets. Now, of course, those spreadsheets will keep changing with time in the circumstances, but a lot of this was designed and thought out and was modified time and again.
Mhm. Well, I just really find that interesting. We hear a lot of gurus suggest you do exactly what you're saying. Draw out that target so you know what you're aiming for. But to be honest, it's kind of a rare scenario that people actually go through the exercise.
Very true. Most of the things happen by accident, but let me tell you, when you plan it, it's lot less stressful. Stress doesn't go away because whatever you plan, I'm pretty sure it never goes as planned. I mean, I have had enough sleepless nights because when the macro economy changes in real estate, there's nothing you can do about it. So you do get sleepless nights, but as long as you plan, you already have a backup plan how to come out of it. And that's why after decades and decades of going through cycles and cycles, we are still standing and can very proudly say that not a single investor has ever lost a dollar with us. And that's a great relief for me to be able to say that.
In the end, is she happy that you did it?
She's still not happy. She really likes the surprise part of it and be impulsive. So I wouldn't say that she's happy with the process, but let me tell you one thing. She is 1,000% happy with the outcome.
There you go. There's nothing better.
The proof is in the pudding. Actions always speak louder than anything else, including words, right?
Right. Well, I think this is, I hate to spend so much time on it, but it's actually not only is it's great to hear you went through that process, but you incorporated her in that process because, I mean, we talk many times about we are the sum of the people we hang out with. Well, you don't hang out with anybody more often than your wife.
100%, 100%. And then there's not only that. I have two children, two daughters, and we have had family meetings every weekend. Now they're in 30s, so they don't like those kind of family meetings that often anymore. But when they were growing up, every weekend we had a family meetings, and the Sangani family business plan, they were incorporated into it. And then we continued to modify based on the changes that took place. There is one thing, if whosoever is watching or listening to me, eh, I can assure you one thing. I'm not smart at many things, but there is one thing I think I've done a fairly good job, and I would strongly recommend everybody that do not be a loner. If you create a team and let the team buy in into what you are going to do and what you're going to achieve, the path to success becomes much more easier to fight through. The fight through the success becomes a lot of fun. And a lot of times, the destination is always pleasant, but the path to the destination should be as enjoyable as the. And if you have a team, it makes it much easier.
It's interesting you bring that up because being an entrepreneur or doing this on your own can be very lonely. And why not incorporate those people and get the buy-ins you need? You need as much support as you can muster.
Absolutely. And these are the people who can permanently make you unhappy. So I don't want any relationship that can permanently make me unhappy going opposite direction to me. So I rather take a step back, take all the time it needs to convince those people and say, hey, please join me. This is the journey I have chosen, and I will be immensely in gratitude of you if you would just help me go through this phase. You may not like it, but tell me what is the cost of you going to do this with me, for me, and I'm willing to pay that cost. But I want you to be with me. And that goes when you surrender in your near relationships. I think surrender is the strongest weapon I've used all my life very effectively.
So, when you were talking, you had these business meetings, family meetings with, at the time, you said your daughters are 30 now, but how young were they when you started?
Probably 8, 9 years old.
And how much information did you give them? Like, were you kind of an open book, letting them know everything, or was it? Because the reason I ask is because I don't know. There's a mentality of you don't let your kids. If there's any kind of strife or struggle, you kind of keep it to yourself.
No, no, I was exactly opposite, and I was criticized very badly about that. My youngest daughter got Lamborghini when she was 15 and a half. She was the youngest Lamborghini owner in the whole world. That's what I was told. And my older daughter had Bentley when she was 17, and people said, you're spoiling your kids. But I don't think so. I think they become more mature, faster, and everything was open to them that day. And today, my kids have more understanding about Sangani family wealth in the asset planning and all the asset protection and all those things than even I do. So I am a strong believer that there is no better strategy than being honest and straightforward. That doesn't mean I will be a cakewalk or a doormat. I still keep my beliefs and my positions in a very assertive way, but I will not let it ruin the relationship.
Just to remind everybody, we're talking to Bharat Singhani, and you can learn more at encore.bz. Encore.bz. That's going to be a clickable link in the show notes. If you found some value in what we're talking about so far, do us a quick favor. Share this with one of your investor friends. If you're watching us on YouTube, a quick like and subscribe really helps that algorithm. So, Bharat, I'd be curious then. You've been through a ton since you started. You bought your first place in 1991, I think you said.
Yes,
You have
sir.
seen every uh, economic downturn and prosperity at this point. Like, can you kind of give us an insight? Where do you see the economy going, and what asset class are you focused on right now?
If I knew that answer, I would be God. So I don't want anybody to feel that I'm talking from a position of knowing future or any kind of authority. All I know is one thing is that you always be prepared for the worst. And especially the leader we have sitting in White House right now, it's very hard to predict what tomorrow is going to bring anyways. But having said that, at the end of the day, real estate is a cycle. And there are two things that are very important that you do not try to mend the cycle to your desires. Cycle will do what the cycle will do, and you need to adjust your desires and your objectives according to the cycle. So that's number one. Don't come and say, I'm going to sell everything in 2 years. That doesn't happen. If it happens to you, salute to you, but it doesn't happen to most people. So you say, I am going to invest and I'm ready. What is the worst thing that can happen? And I'm ready for that. So first is not do not try to time the market, and second is be ready for the worst. So when you create the Excel spreadsheet of any project that you do, you put the what is the worst that can happen to you and say, okay, if this is happens, if the interest rates go up, if the occupancy goes down, if the expenses go up, the labor goes up, how far will it go up in general? If it's going to require $5 million worth of cushion, I better have that $6 million worth of cushion sitting in the bank before I take the risk of getting into real estate. These are the two major shortfalls I have found in most people. A, they have expectations that the market will behave according to their desires, and they are very dissatisfied, very depressed when the market doesn't behave to their desires. And second, they do not have enough reserve when the market goes in the opposite direction to them. If you can master these two things, the rest of it is relatively easy, not an issue.
No, no, you bring up a really valid point. I mean, we get a lot of feedback, especially in the real estate world. Leverage is a way to acquire a lot, but it is a way for you to also get into trouble pretty quickly.
100%. 100.
What is your team focused on right now? What is the market telling you to focus on at the moment?
So we have been very fortunate that since 2009, 2010, we've been building multifamily with under the HUD umbrella 221.4. And what that is that you can build Class A multifamily with a 40-year fixed rate loan from the government, and it can go anywhere between 70 to 80 plus percentages of the project cost. And we have had nothing but success in that department. So, regardless of where the economy is, we always are developing Class A multifamily projects. At any given time, we have somewhere between 200 to $500 million worth of assets in some form of development. So today, we are still building multifamily, Class A, HUD-based solutions. We also are very eager to wait for the opportunities where we can acquire multifamily. So if you ask me right now, our top concentration is development of HUD-based multifamily. We also had projected just before COVID that retail is not going to go away. When Amazon started capturing the world, everybody got so scared that there will be no business for the four-wall retail. But we felt that that wasn't going to be the case because you still can't get your hair and beard done online. You still have to go to a place or nail or whatever else. The services just cannot go away online. So we are heavily invested in retail, commercial. In fact, we are about to close probably $100 million worth of retail shopping centers in Chicago area in the next 30 days. We are not as active in hospitality development or acquisitions because the market and the expectations of the sellers are still the difference between ask and bid is too far too far distant from each other, and we just don't think that the jury has really come out on that. So we are watching it and see how things develop. So that's what we are doing nowadays on real estate side.
So the HUD product, is that the government doing its best to answer the call regarding the housing shortage and a few things? Is that the
If you look at it across the world, our economy is done very well. Is one is single family housing. Our from last when I read, if I am not wrong, $55 trillion are spent being used in our single family housing. And right after that, everybody who cannot afford single family housing, they all go to the multifamily. And that also is a huge business. And that keeps our GDP up. And no other country, or not many other countries, have figured this out that actually entitling your citizens to have an independent wealth in the form of building their homes and it is second to none. And that's why the government is very incentivized to keep producing these multifamily units will ever go away. And then we are here to take advantage of a good cause that the department is built on.
do they dictate like what you have to build, or are there certain requirements outside of what would be the norm?
Listen, at the end of the day, it's a government entity. The good part, though, is it doesn't dictate, but it has its own boxes to check. And as long as they can see that there is a need of multifamily units in that particular area and your cost and the loan that they are going to give you to build that unit will produce some returns, they will do the deal.
Okay. So I'd like to change the subject just slightly. Over your course here now, could you give us what was the biggest lesson you've learned, or what was the most expensive mistake?
Let me tell you, if we start counting mistakes, there is barrage of it. And your show won't be long enough for me to even cover a few mistakes I've made. But you also have to understand, here is a guy coming from India, could barely speak English, has no knowledge of business in this country, and they're trying to do business. Okay. And so I went through all these phases of, I just was very fortunate and lucky that every time I made a mistake, by the time I realized, somehow things worked out for me. And I wouldn't say mistake, but I think what everybody should know, and I probably knew that because of my business background, that I never entertained a business where I did not have an ability to withstand the drawdown. And being a physician, I had a constant income coming. That's one advice I'll if anybody wants any advice, I don't think I'm strong enough or bright enough to give advice to anybody. But if there is one, I would say never give up your daytime job. After from 1991 till today, I still have my daytime job. If I have to go and expand that job from 1 day a month to 30 days a month, nobody's stopping me. So never give up your daytime job. Do everything on the extra time and the extra money that you have, and I think you'll be okay.
Just to remind everybody again, encore.bz, encore.bz. This has just been such a fantastic conversation, Bharat. Before we jump into the rapid fire and close out this episode, is there a subject or a question that you wished I would have asked you here so far today?
No, no, you are covering it very well. Listen, I'm open book, and if any of your listeners or viewer has any more questions, they can reach out to me. My email address will be at ankur.bz. And let me tell you one thing, 99.9% I respond to all emails I get.
Well, that's pretty impressive,
Okay.
especially knowing that, well, it's 1 day a month, but you still have your day job.
Yes, absolutely. But I think we need to leave a channel where people know they can reach out to me. One of the things, now that you brought it up, let me explain the structure of the company, that it has multiple layers, right? I am kind of sitting here 30,000 feet above. Then there are multiple layers of regionals and presidents and COOs and stuff like that. And ultimately, is the end user, whether they are using our product, whether they have a shopping center tenancy, or if they are using one of our apartment complexes. Let me tell you, every tenant, every investor, everybody who has apartments with us, everybody who is an end user, every employee, they all get an email from me at least once every year, if not twice a year. And we call it culture of nine. So what it does, you get an email from me and say, hey, if you know me or if you know my company, rate us on a scale of 0 to 10. And if you rate us less than 9, Dr. Sangani will personally call you to see how we can get you to above 9. And I think this entire layer of hierarchy, I collapse it between the end user and me with one email. I think that's one thing I'm very proud of what we have done, and that has kept me in touch with the end users. Because at the end of the day, end user will define your success or failure. If they are not happy, you are destined to fail someday.
You never had different challenges as you were scaling your business. But what are some of the thoughts there regarding, it sounds like you are a planner. So you're probably doing that in this case too, but what was your biggest challenge in just scaling and having
Uh,
so many people working?
I think the big number one challenge is there are only 24 hours in a day. So the only way you get more hours is you cut your sleeping time. And what helped me was being a cardiologist. My training was designed on that. So I could sleep less, 4 to 5 hours a night, and I could still function fairly well. The second biggest challenge or second biggest monumental task that I had to do was to create a team who believed in you. Now, think about it. Here is a cardiologist, a young guy who is coming from India, and he's telling you, hey, I don't have any business knowledge. Hey, I, I'm not here to provide you with anything. I'm counting on your expertise to provide me. And the only thing I'm going to do is to provide you with resources. But let me tell you something, you will never have shortage of resources as long as you will perform what you said you will perform. And to sell that philosophy, I tell people I'm not their father or mother. I'm not here to do anything for them. We are here to do things for each other. And if you don't have that mindset, this is not the right company for you to work. And now to put those people together and give them pride of ownership is a task. But let me tell you, we have a bunch of people who have been with me for 20 plus years, and we have created a family 15,000 miles away from my hometown. I'm very happy that I have a great family. That much I can tell you.
No, that's great. I really appreciate you sharing all of that. Bharat, if you're ready, we'll jump into the rapid fire questions and close out this episode.
Absolutely.
What lie do real estate investors often tell themselves?
Everything would be fine.
If you could go back in time and give your younger self a piece of advice, what would it be?
Do not think you are higher than or brighter than anybody else. You'll be fine.
Do you have a book recommendation?
There are 3 or 4 books that I strongly recommend. The one that I really have enjoyed is How to Win Friends and Influence People from Dale Carnegie. And I think that really changed my mind. And the second book I would strongly recommend is My Experiments with Truth. And that's from Mr. Mahatma Gandhi, the father of India. And I think those my experiment with truth built my character, and How to Win Friends and Influence People allowed me to speak to others and still convey my messages without offending them.
What single strategy or tool have you implemented that has had the biggest time saving impact to you or your business?
The biggest time saving impact is one of the world's most reliable outsourcing guy, delegation guy. But more than that, I also create an accountability. So everything I delegate, I have an accountability factor that is associated with it. And that's how I can do so many things because I'm not doing anything. At this point in my career, I don't think if somebody could breathe for me, I would go ahead and outsource breathing for them. That's how what minute level I've gone to and given away stuff that somebody else can do better than me.
Oh, well, again, it was Dr. Bharat Singhani. You could learn more at encore.bz, encore.bz. That's going to be a clickable link in the show notes.
Thank you very much.